Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Test Prep Time Live. Just a reminder, we'll be here every day, every weekday, Monday through Friday, talking about some key strategies, key topics related to the SAT, ACT, and general academic help. Feel free to jump on and chat in any questions you have. I'll stick around for a minute or so at the end to answer any questions. We'll have some information about some other services and things you can take advantage of through Meth Test Prep. And I'll put up some links and information for you at the end as well. Today, I wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about an important topic that comes up a lot on the SAT and ACT English, but is generally just good grammar rules for your writing, for your reading comprehension, to make sure you understand what subject-verb agreement is. It's a pretty central part of every English sentence and can be a sort of a foundational jumping off point to understand other aspects of a sentence, other rules of agreement within a sentence. Now, the first slide I put up here is a really helpful guide to thinking about the English on the SAT and ACT. But I would say these rules are generally great rules to know and be aware of in your writing, in general reading through passages and understanding concepts and ideas. But this chart itself is a great map for focusing in on the most important things you need to know. And what I've done here is sort of divided the questions up between grammar and rhetoric. If you've been following along to some of these test prep times, we've talked about different topics within English. The grammar side are more of the rules of putting together an English sentence, making sure all those small pieces like punctuation and agreement and things work for the sentence itself. Whereas the rhetoric questions are much more about reading comprehension. It's about ideas and meaning and understanding the sentence or paragraph or text. So this is a really helpful guide, and I even put a couple tips below the chart on how to move through the English sections really with a lot of efficiency and effectiveness. I've had students really find a lot of value in this, and this is just one example of a number of study guides that we offer in our web program, but we also offer some of the guides for free right on our website. So if you go to that URL at SAT ACT Prep Resources, we got a bunch of free resources here that you can take advantage of, good information for parents and students. Just jump to that URL and you can download some guides, watch some videos, just giving you a lot of accessible information that you can utilize during your prep. The guides are there as well, so if you liked some of the stuff you're seeing here, you can download some of these guides to help with your preparation. Okay, today we're talking specifically about the topic here under grammar rules. We're going to be talking about the very first one, which is a pretty fundamental one and shows up a lot, and that's subject-verb agreement here. So this is the first one we're going to be talking about and looking at today. A couple of key concepts before we look at a few examples. Okay, every sentence in English needs a subject and a verb, and if you never heard that before, welcome to 101. And not surprisingly, many of us understand the basics of English without not ever knowing really what the rules are. And for those of you that enjoy math and having a formula and sticking to a plan and a rule, you can view grammar in very similar ways. There are set rules in English, and if you follow them, you can kind of recognize the same patterns, the same situations every time. One of the first is to know every sentence needs a subject and verb. And what that really means is a subject is just someone or something. It's usually a noun, doesn't always have to be, but 99% of the time it's a noun. And then a verb is the being or doing. So this is like the running or thinking or laughing or building. All right, so this is sort of the action. But sometimes a verb can just be like is or was, can just be a being instead of a doing, but it can often be an action as well. So if I put a simple sentence here like John ran, that's a sentence. I have a subject, person or thing, and I have a verb. I don't have a lot more information, but that's all I need because it's a complete thought. So every sentence needs a subject and a verb to be a sentence, and it needs to be a complete thought. I'm not waiting for more information. Now, many sentences also have an object. This, if the subject is the person or thing that's doing the action, then the object is the thing or person that's receiving the action. Object is not required every time, but it's very common. And that would just be more specific. John ran what? Oh, John ran the race. Okay, now I have a subject, a verb, and an object. What did he run? He ran the race. Now, when we talk about the subject and verb, since they're the fundamental parts of a sentence, we need to make sure that they are in agreement. And agreement is just a long word meaning one or many. That's all agreement means. That's all you have to think about when you consider an agreement question. Do I have one thing or do I have many things? And that's all I have to figure out for subject-verb agreement. Now, there are some tricky things that I have to consider, but really for the first part, all I want to say is this one thing or many things? And that will determine my answer. So what we're going to do in each sentence is we're going to find the subject, right? That can be a little tricky. Go into the sentence and make sure you know who or what is the main character, the main thing doing the action. Find the verb and just state them together, right? Most of you have been writing, reading, speaking English for a long time, maybe your whole life, and saying them together will help you hear the agreement. It's one of those aspects of the English language that we can trust our intuition on. For most of the time, we can just hear the agreement if we state the correct subject and verb together. But part of the challenge is finding the subject and verb, and that can be part of the issue in a lot of these sentences. Let's take a quick look at what I'm describing with subject-verb agreement. Again, what we're really focused on here is identifying the subject and the verb and then checking whether we have a singular agreement or a plural agreement. Look at a singular example. A singular subject needs a singular verb. That would be this example here. A musician develops her own unique style over time. The musician is one, and so a musician develops with an S on the verb. If you have an S on your verb, 9 times out of 10, it's a singular verb. That's kind of opposite from what we think about with subjects, and nouns usually become plural by adding an S. But rather than worry yourself too much about the exact rule here, once you identify the subject and the verb, just state them together. If you said musician develop, would that sound right? No, and that's all you need to know. Just state the subject and verb together. In the second example, we have a plural subject. Most mistakes result from oversight and carelessness. So I would say mistakes result, not mistakes results, right? You can hear the agreement if you state the subject and verb together. But be careful. There's a few things we need to look out for. Let's look at this first example I have up. Teachers working in Oaktown at the local charter school implements new methods of instruction. Now, if you read this carefully, you might note that something is off. And that would be correct. The verb implements here has an S on it. And usually that implies a singular subject. What I need to do is go find out what the subject is here. And if I ask myself the simple question of who or what is doing the implementing, that will lead me to the subject. If I go back to the top of the sentence, teachers working in Oaktown at the local charter school, okay. It looks like the teachers here are the ones that are implementing. So let me just take those two words out and state them together. Teachers implements, that doesn't sound right. Teachers implement, that's much better. The correct answer here is choice C. Teachers implement. Now, what I did there was I focused on the subject and verb and I ignored all of this. Okay, and this is a common setup where they're going to give you a bunch of distracting words in between. So this whole phrase, working in Oaktown and at the local charter school, it's all a phrase just describing which teachers I'm talking about. So none of that is the subject. And don't get fooled if you see nouns like Oaktown or local charter school. None of those are the subject. It has to be this word before the phrase. So don't get distracted by words and phrases in between the subject and verb. These are the main parts I want. Be on the lookout for especially prepositional phrases like at here, or of, or for, or by, to, in. These are prepositions and they usually begin prepositional phrases. Another good clue. The subject will never be within the prepositional phrase. It will always be before it. So anything that comes after the at can't be in the subject. Always look for the subject before the preposition. And here again, by ignoring these distracting words and focusing on the subject and verb, I'll get the answer. Now you might look at B and D, and those slightly change the verb tense, but I don't even care at all because this is still a singular verb and a singular helping verb. Is and has won't work with teachers, so neither of those matter what tense they are. Okay, let's look at a few more examples of how they're doing this directly on the test. Remember, don't be distracted by words in between. If we take a look here at this somewhat longer sentence, there's a lot of parts to it. So we have to slow down, break it down, find the main subject and the main verb. On graduate record examination, GRE, on the graduate record examination, for example, students intending to study philosophy in graduate school has scored higher than students in all but 4 other majors. Okay. What I always want to do, and this can be a helpful tip for finding the subject and verb, start with the verb. Find out what's the main action or doing of the sentence. And they've helped us here. They've underlined that part. So when you see a bunch of different verb forms in your answer choices, you can be pretty sure it's either going to be subject-verb agreement or it may have something to do with verb tense. But I see different versions of score, scoring, scored here. That's the main verb. Now my next question should be, who or what is scoring? Who or what is doing the score? Well, if you look closely at the sentence, who is scoring higher is the students. The students. So I need a plural subject. I have a plural subject. I need a plural verb. If I say students has, does that sound correct? Students has? No. That would be if one student, a student has. I have plural here, so I need to go with a plural verb. What's distracting us possibly is either the GRE in the front, but that's all an introduction. See the comma here? I can kind of block this off because that's all an introduction. The 4 examples called an appositive or non-essential phrase. That's also something I can somewhat ignore for the moment for the purposes of this question. I could even have just started the sentence here, students. Okay, students is the subject, and all of this, yes, telling me which students are scoring higher. Yeah, it's the ones intending to study philosophy, but this again is just like our previous example, a description phrase after the subject. Don't get fooled, nothing in that phrase will be the subject. This is the only subject, students. Okay, so now let's state it with the answer. Students have scored, students scores, students scoring. Now you may think that D sounds okay, students scoring higher than students in all but 4 majors. But this is called the present progressive tense with an ing. And what happens if I put scoring in here, students scoring higher than other students, it actually just adds another description. Which students? Oh, the students scoring higher. It doesn't function actually as a verb here. Or what it creates is the need for more information afterwards at the end of the sentence. And since the sentence ends, it doesn't make any sense. You probably heard that students scores doesn't sound right and students has doesn't sound right. It's only students have. So although once again, the answer choices here change the tense slightly, I'm just focused on subject-verb agreement. Find the subject, find the verb, and state them together. Here's another similar example where once again, my goal will be to find the subject. I'm going to give you a minute to see if you can find the correct answer and chat it in here. All right, let's take a closer look at this problem. Like any other health problems, these ailments can increase employee absenteeism, which in turn is costly for employers. What's tricky in this sentence is it's underlined the verb is. Something is costly for employers. What I need to do now is go back into my sentence and ask myself, what is costly? Okay, is it health problems? No, because this, once again, is part of an introduction before the real sentence or the main sentence even begins. So I can block this off. These ailments can increase. Okay, I have a subject here, ailments, and can increase a verb. So I have a subject-verb agreement earlier in the sentence. What I need to ask myself is the ailments also what's costly for employers? Well, a little bit indirectly, but it looks like the ailments are causing absenteeism. Not employees, that's just the type of absenteeism. Absenteeism is my subject. This is what's costly for employers. So I just stated together, absenteeism is costly. Yes, it's just one thing. So the correct answer here is no change. I can't say absenteeism are. I can't say absenteeism have. You might have said absenteeism is. Once again, that's okay. But this word being, here's a warning. 99% of the time, it's an empty phrase or an empty word that means nothing. Is being, is already means being. It's a conjugation of the verb to be. So whenever you see this on the SAT or ACT, and most times in most English sentences, it's unnecessary and it's incorrect. So again, this had a lot of nouns in the sentence, but I had to take it apart and ask myself, what is really being costly? The ailments lead to absenteeism, and that's what's costly. So make sure you can find the correct subject. Last example here. I'll give you about 30 seconds to chat in to see if you can come up with the answer. I'll read the sentence. Any new York City construction project using municipal funds are required to consider whether historical artifacts will be affected during construction. And if that possibility exists or is possible, an urban archaeologist must be consulted. The answer. I'll read the sentence. Any new Okay, let's take a closer look at this question real quickly. There's a lot of information. Any New York City construction project using municipal funds are required to consider. Okay, again, let's focus on question 35 is underlining are, a verb. Something is or are required. What is required? It looks like it's not New York City. It's not the municipal funds. It's the project. What type? A construction project. This is my noun. This is my subject. The subject is the construction project. And would I say project are required? No. Would I say project have been required? No. A project is required? That's the one. A singular noun, a singular subject needs a singular verb. So even in this case where you can see the choices are changing up the verb tense, and that has to do, tense really is a matter of timing, past, present, or future. Here, we don't even need to consider or care about the time frame, which may have been a little tricky to even figure out in this sentence. Is it past, present, or future? I can skip that step entirely while focusing on the subject-verb agreement. Since it's singular, there's only a singular verb that would work. The correct answer here is choice C. Be on the lookout for sentences like this that jam so much information and a lot of words and nouns into the sentence to try and distract you. Don't be distracted. Focus on finding the verb and finding the correct subject to match it. State them together in your head, and you'll usually hear exactly what the agreement should be. Okay, I hope that was helpful as a good little introduction to subject-verb agreement. This is a bunch of points on the SAT, ACT English, but also really in general, this is how you write well. This is how you can do better on reading comprehension. We're doing longer versions of these test prep time classes every day at 1 o'clock. So jump in and join us today at 1 o'clock. We'll be focusing on linear equations and math. Pretty big concept on these tests, but also in general for Algebra 1, Algebra 2. Tomorrow we'll be focusing on paired passages in the reading section, and we'll be looking at different topics each week. You can find out more at Test Prep Time Plus online. We do a lot of subject tutoring in addition to SAT and ACT tutoring if you need help in any particular school subject or in preparation for the upcoming AP exams. We also have fuller length classes, so if you want to learn all the concepts and strategies to do well on the SAT or ACT, check out methodtestprep.com/classes. And our self-paced program, which is where those guides came from, and a lot of helpful videos, quizzes, full-length exams, really every major concepts and strategy you could need on the exam, you can find in our self-paced program. It's 50% off right now if you use the code FUTURE at checkout. And of course, just reach out if you have any questions. Happy to discuss with you your test prep or general academic help. We work with thousands of students each month, and we can help you in a variety of different ways. Don't hesitate to ask any question about these exams or about your plan for the next few weeks or months leading up to the tests. And find out more information right on our blog on our website as well. All right, thanks for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock, same time.